All right, so I posted a video yesterday about the chapter I was reading from Good to Great by Jim Collins, and talked about the hedgehog concept and what I'd been thinking. And for whatever reason, I didn't realize that I hadn't finished the chapter yet. So it went through a whole bunch more stuff, and a lot of the thrust. So, and I was a little bit disjointed then. I'm trying not to be now, but I've had a little more time to think about it. And ultimately, I think a lot of this is just going to come down to kind of setting a bar, working toward it, and then going, oh, that's not the thing, right? And then just having the discussions and the fight and the grit to stick it out and figure out what the right things are, right? But I really do feel like, at least for the first thing, what we're passionate about, I mean, it's podcasts for software developers, and it's helping people level up, stay current, build a solid career and a solid foundation for life. And, the foundation for life thing's kind of broad, and so, we are focused primarily on the software folks. So, yeah, that's kind of a big thing, and, that's what we're going to work toward. What that does is it does open up a couple of possibilities, and it shuts down a couple of other ones. So just kind of figuring that out really is kind of going to take some time. But yeah, so a lot of it's just going to be getting out there. I think for, what we can be best in the world at, it is the podcast for software developers. And maybe a little bit broader than that, content for software developers, right? So we may broaden out to videos, YouTube, which isn't technically, strictly speaking, podcasting, but isn't far off from what we're doing anyway. So just things like that, where we kind of open the gates to a few more opportunities and just do that. The metric, so the financial engine, is going to be income or profit per podcast episode. And it's interesting because you boil it down to that and it feels a little bit mercenary, like, oh, okay, so you're just going to focus on the money. And that's not the case, but you do need an economic engine behind it to make it work. And so, it's like, okay, so where do we set that economic engine? And that's the thing that makes the most sense. So the cost per podcast episode are actually relatively fixed for similarly length podcasts, right? So if it's an hour's worth of podcast content, it follows the same kind of format, and we have the same kinds of people on there, it's going to take about the same amount of work to get one out. Whether it's listened to by tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, or tens of people. So that is kind of an interesting dynamic there. But the flip side is that if we set our sponsorships the right way and we market them the right way, then we can at least make each show profitable on its own and work our way up that way. Now, the other interesting thing is that may mean cutting some shows. I'm not to that point yet. I don't think the shows that are on our lowest end really have had time to prove themselves out, and I really want to give them a good shake as far as marketing them before I cut them off. And they are growing. All of them are growing. So that said, they could grow into a powerhouse. We just don't know yet. But the other thing that it means is that we've got to make the content so good that people can't help but tell other people about it, because that'll grow the listenership. And the listenership is a large part of what the sponsors measure on ROI. The other thing that comes into play is we've got to make sure that our sponsorship rates are on point and that we're consistently selling out the spots, because that also contributes heavily to the podcast or to the profitability of each episode. And so this has been the hardest thing for me to figure out, is just getting somebody in the box to sell sponsorships, right? Because I wind up traveling, and like at OzCon today, I walked through about half the expo floor, met a lot of people. A lot of them were interested in sponsoring. I've talked to companies last week and the week before that were interested in sponsoring that, we just jumped on a call. I'm working on some other initiatives that are going to either help us boost our general awareness, or in other ways are going to pay off, right? And so all of that helps, but I'm not always around to schedule the sales calls and to jump on the sales calls. One example of this is next week my family and we're all going to Texas to visit my brother-in-law. His son's getting baptized, and we're going to be gone for like a week and a half. And so, I can't take any sales calls that whole time. And so it'd be nice to have somebody around who can take that on. The other thing is if I had a person full-time prospecting and finding sponsors, even if I had to give up some commission, a lot of the shows would actually wind up being more profitable because they'd have more spots filled, even though I was giving up a percentage in commission. So anyway, it's interesting. The problem is that I find that I'm really the best at representing the shows right now. And so I could bring somebody on and train them, but that would be a process. So just trying to figure that bit out and make it work. And then profitability per show also, we could put out our own products, right, and sell those through the shows. And if we did that, then, we could amortize that across whatever shows the person who signed up listens to. And so if they've heard about our product on JavaScript Jabber or Ruby Rogues or whatever, then, that would increase the profitability of that show. And so it's another option, and I'm trying to figure out exactly where all that lands. So anyway, it really is interesting just to kind of figure out how this is all going to go together. But it does give us a metric to try and figure out how to measure, and something that we can work toward. And right now, we don't have any products, so it really is just down to the sponsorships, and that makes it really easy to calculate. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm leaning toward at the moment. I'm probably going to bring it up at the team meeting on Monday and run it past the crew and see what they think. I think everybody will be on board, and then we're just going to boil down our level 2 dashboard, which is kind of our way of checking in on where things are at, and we're just going to boil it down to what was this week's episode worth and how can we increase that for next week, or in 2 or 3 weeks, whatever we're looking at. So yeah, so that's kind of the deal there, and yeah, we're just figuring it out and making all of this work. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking about. So yeah, so that all comes out of the reading that I've been doing for 75 Hard. A lot of the other pictures I've been posting to social media are, basically like, me running or thumbs up at the camera, in my running gear, or, I've taken some pictures of my iPad, when I've been reading. But I think this is a more meaningful post for it, mainly because it just boils down to, what I'm really thinking about, like what this is doing for me in my head, as opposed to what it's doing for me on the scale. And I haven't weighed in a week because I've been here and I don't have a scale here in this condo that I'm renting. So I'm kind of curious to see what I've done when I get home. But like after the first week or 2 weeks of 75 Hard, even though I screwed up a couple of times on the diet and stuff, I had lost like 10 pounds. And so I'm wondering, after another week or so, week and a half since I've weighed in, where I'm at now, because I'm betting that there is some change on the scale. So, a lot of stuff going on there with that, and that is working out great. But anyway, that's kind of where my head's at with the 75 Hard and with the Jim Collins thing. The other thing, though, is that and this is hard for me, but it did force me to then figure out how to prioritize things, right? Because we've been working on Podwrench, which is the podcasting tool that I've been working on. I actually dropped a bunch of money so that we could be a sponsor at Podcast Movement. And for the profitability thing, it's not my primary priority. And it's the thing that I kind of want to play with. So I had a friend come to me and want to do a mobile app for podcast network, and that's something that I want for devchat.tv. So again, it's something that I could work on, and I can't make it a priority. I mean, it may be something that I play with here or there, but for the most part, I'm working on the other stuff. And so the stuff on my 12-week year, which is kind of my planning for 3 months at a time, the first one was get Podwrench ready to launch, and it's not number 1 anymore, it's number 3. And the other ones are to increase listenership by 50%, which directly affects the bottom line, and then to sell all the sponsorships through the end of the year by September 21st. So, I mean, you can imagine kind of, okay, so I'm going hardcore now toward growing the shows, and I'm going hardcore towards selling the sponsorships. And then if I can streamline the process of production, then great for me. But that goes to decreasing what it costs to run the shows as opposed to increasing what I can get for sponsorships. And the margin in increasing the sponsorships right now is orders of magnitude higher than what I can cut in costs from producing the show. So it's really just kind of an interesting dynamic, figuring all that out and making it all work. So anyway, yeah, lots of things I'm thinking about there. I know this is kind of a long post, especially for hey, you've got to post every day about this challenge, but doing the challenge this way has really kind of poked me and forced me to really think through this. And reading the book, like actually physically reading the book, Andy got onto the podcast and said, some of you are doing audiobooks. That's no. I think it's really forced me to kind of process the information in a way that, sorry, my arm's shaking. I just got back from my run. To really process the information that I'm taking in and just nailing down what I'm reading and then really think through it. So anyway, been super happy with it. So kudos to Andy for coming up with this, and I'm doing the work. I'm getting it done. I think this is day 10. I started it a week ago on Monday, and it is Wednesday now. So yeah, day 10. So 10 down, 65 to go. But yeah, so that's what I'm thinking about here, just getting her done.